Thank you, Shreya. Bhushan Sethi, delighted to be here. Sorry I couldn't join you in person today. I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes to talk about the reshaped landscape of work. My experience is influenced by my work with clients and been working for 25 years in the strategy management consulting space across different industries and geographies. I also teach at NYU Stern School of Business, a strategy class, and I've worked extensively in different parts of the globe around these topics. So some of the conclusions that we're seeing around the reshaped world of work. First of all, the post-pandemic changes are here to stay. Whether we like it or not, economically, we operate differently. Here in the US, we have stubborn unemployment in the threes. We have high inflation that's coming down. But the old economic models that we're looking at, and everyone's scratching their head around labor economists and the jobs market, has changed. The workplace has obviously changed, and not just return to office, but every aspect of worker preferences have changed. Societally, we've changed. People are much more comfortable talking about social issues. Firms have to take positions on social issues. So whether we like it or not, the post-pandemic changes are here to stay in a number of different examples. One of those is also around trust. Business leaders and businesses in general have to think about building trust with their stakeholders, whether they be their regulators, their customers, their employees, their future employees, their contingent workers. Trust is a currency in business that we're seeing across all different industries. And those businesses that will be sustainable, whether you're in the tech sector preventing disinformation, whether you're in the financial sector thinking about the right products and the right investments for your companies, or if you're in the automotive business thinking about safety as you manufacture products and bring them to market, trust is important now and it will be in the future. The next point is scenario planning. Scenario planning, so the need to kind of think about multiple different sets of data points, internal and external, whether they be macroeconomic factors, whether they be interest rates, whether they be internal employee feedback or customer feedback. Many businesses have learned that if they don't practice good planning processes and think about their business strategy and business model and how it needs to change in the light of these changes, the pandemic being one of them, those businesses that invest in scenario planning are more prepared for a very disruptive, volatile future. So we've seen that scenario planning and bringing together finance people, business people, HR people, and technology people has gone mainstream and is a capability that many firms need to build in the reshaped world of work. Next, leadership. Leaders today have to operate in a very different way. They have to inspire this generation and the next generation coming into the workplace in very different ways. They need to engage their employees. We've all heard of quiet quitting. We've all heard of different aspects of people setting boundaries. People need to be engaged and inspired to actually bring the best and bring their most productive, authentic self to work. But leaders also need to enable. They need to enable their talent by actually empowering them. They need to give them the right tools. They need to give them the right access to training. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And the last couple of remarks as we kind of kick this off is, right now, when you think about the reshaped world of work, it's all about execution. It's not about a grandiose strategy. It's about, can I execute this strategy? Can I launch my new product? Can I integrate my acquisition with a bias to execution and speed, and also selective risk taking? In this world today, we think about we've in the last couple of years, we've created vaccines. We've created different industries. We're starting to create green jobs. We're starting to think about infrastructure in different parts of the world, especially in India. Firms have to take selective risks. In our CEO survey this year, 40% of businesses said that they do not believe themselves to be economically viable in the next 10 years. All of those businesses have to invest in planning, have to invest in execution, and have to selectively place some bets and make some risks. Finally, we can't talk about the reshaped world of work without talking about future skills. And spoiler alert, skills are going to get more tech, more AI focused, more data driven. I've spent a lot of time with ChatGPT myself and exploring it both kind of as a professor and as a practitioner. It's here to stay and it's going to be additive and helpful, but also green relevant jobs that enable you to decarbonize your supply chain, to think about your footprint. And also human skills are not going away and actually get more important. So I'm looking forward to kind of drill into each of those with you. And I'm going to bring some data and research from my colleagues at PwC. So firstly, we asked a question to CEOs. We surveyed over 4,000 CEOs across different countries and sectors, and we released that data this January. What's really interesting is when we asked CEOs what the biggest concerns were and the biggest threats to their business in the next 12 months and in the next 5 years, it was the same. It was all about inflation and macroeconomic volatility. So again, an example that there's going to be more existential shocks, whether they be a pandemic, whether they be a terrible war. We've seen a natural disaster happen just recently in Turkey and Syria. Businesses have to be prepared for changes to pivot into new products, to look at their portfolio of businesses to say, do I need to exit certain businesses? Do I need to double down on certain customers? So really investing in understanding how the external environment and your internal environment can change your business is going to be that capability for the future. What they're also seeing, the CEOs, is there's lots of challenges to profitability in their industry, not just the changing customer demands and preferences, but they're worried about regulatory changes. They're worried about labor and skill shortages. They're worried about technology disruption. If you're in the world of banking, you've been concerned about fintech players for a while. If you're in the world of payments, you're concerned about that. Every industry is worried about different forms of disruption. Think about all the generative AI we just talked about. That's a huge challenge if you play in the media space. So the net here is, as firms are planning for uncertainty, thinking about customers, thinking about the labor, as in access to those skills, is going to be critically important for their growth. So thinking about the capabilities you need, whether it's focus on decarbonization, whether it's more focus on deep tech talent or analytical talent, much of which we've been talking about for a number of years, that is still critical going forward. So the future just got much more uncertain. Firms are investing in planning, but they see the linkages between the investment in people's skills and also keeping an eye on regulation and changing customer preferences as part of driving their profitability over the next few years. But we also talk about the need to inspire and engage your workforce. So in the same survey, what's interesting is the CEOs said to us, I'm really comfortable with the fact that many of the employees' behaviors and values are aligned. But if you look at some of this data here, there's some cultural challenges. Demand and debate and dissent is not actually encouraged in nearly half of these organizations. In the same way, companies are loath to tolerate small-scale failures. So if you think about the need to innovate, the need to kind of build new value creation, new partner with new joint ventures, think about different businesses to acquire. Firms have struggled to tolerate small-scale failures, and they're going to need that if they're going to innovate and think about their business going forward. The other interesting stats here for me, in terms of the decision-making. So there's a question here at the bottom of the chart that says, leaders in my company make strategic decisions over the future of the business without consulting me. It's 75%. Said differently, today's leaders, C-suite leaders, need to be empowering their people to drive more decision-making. So as you think about leaders and you think about the new reshaped world of work, encouraging debate and dissent and being comfortable so that we can get all of the collective minds in, tolerating small-scale failures and moving at speed and driving innovation, but also empowering more of your people is going to be critical. So as you think about inspiring and engaging, we can't talk about that without talking about the workforce. We have lived in the tightest talent markets that many of us have known since the financial crisis. This has been a great 13 years for workers by and large, especially knowledge workers. CEOs in our survey are basically expecting the same levels of attrition over the next year. And so what that's saying is people are still going to look for jobs. Specialist talent is still going to have opportunities. But because CEOs still see talent as particularly tight, they're going to do one of two things. They're going to focus on inspiring and engaging that talent. They're also going to look to retain that talent. The days of the financial crisis where firms will at scale look to eliminate a significant number of headcount, firms are going to be much more cautious. Now, obviously, we've seen in the tech sector, the banking sector, the media sector, some corrections, but we're not seeing the scale of workforce transitions that we saw, say, in the financial crisis. And that's a really important note as we think about the growth agenda, the access to talent, the retention of critical talent. And yes, firms may keep hold of more talent, both critical and important talent, because of the real challenges with hiring and onboarding talent and the challenges they've seen through the Great Resignation. So we talk about inspiring and engaging the workforce, but what is the workforce sentiment today? Right now, in our survey, we did a survey of 52,000 workers across 44 countries. They basically told us that there's a lot of challenges right now. Let's take the younger workforce. 38% of Generation Z actually believe that their role could be replaced by technology. There is more technology coming, whether it's AI technology, climate technology, cloud technology. We need to engage and manage the anxiety of our youngest population in the workforce and those soon to be entering the workforce. 65% of workers are saying that they're talking about social issues at work and having a positive experience. People want to talk about what's concerning them at work, whether it's a issue around LGBT, whether it's an issue around safety, whether it's an issue around gender equity. People want to talk about these issues, and leaders have to build that muscle, not to solve the problems, but at least to listen and empathize with people, because it does impact their productivity and experience, and it impacts your brand and reputation. 50% of people have faced discrimination. And the other stat I want to kind of double click on is around job fulfillment and authenticity and fairness. And I'm going to go into that in a bit more detail here. We asked a question because we were really curious for these 52,000 workers, what would make them leave an organization? And what's really interesting is the top three basically came out as, if my job's not fulfilling, if I can't be my authentic self, and if I'm not fairly rewarded. Then it was about, does my team care about me? And am I listened to by my manager? And what's really important is the old adage of you join a firm and leave a manager is really important, but the new workforce preferences are highlighted here. And these are similar to what we see with our clients, that pay is table stakes. The relationships with the boss are important. But if you don't find the job fulfilling, and again, that's deeply personal, and we mean different things to different people in different roles and country. But if you don't find the job fulfilling and you cannot be yourself and you're not fairly rewarded, and again, there's a lot of work being done on pay transparency around the world, that's critical. So again, to inspire and engage, really understand and ask questions to your people to say, what makes work fulfilling? How can we actually take bureaucracy out? How can we inspire people? How can we empower people so they're working on work that is going to be enriching and fulfilling for them? What's also important as you think about this data, we analyze that data and we slice and dice it by different demographics. And not surprising to probably many people here, but an issue we need to address in society, in the workplace, is every one of those areas came out lower for women by 7 to 8 percentage points. Women feel less empowered to ask for a promotion, to ask for a raise, that they're fairly paid, and that their managers listen to them. So as part of that, inspire and engaging your workers, really focusing on, in this case, women, but really looking at this data within your organization to say, what is the sentiment of your people? I encourage everyone here to be working with their HR and their people teams to say, what's this data for us? If we polled our people, what would cause our people to leave? And what can we do to address it? And as we move on, one of the themes, so we've talked about the need for planning, the need that there's going to be existential shocks that we need to address, the links between labor, customers, regulation, and the growth agenda of business. We talked about the importance of empowering people and inspiring them and engaging them. I'd like to talk about the final point now about execution and risk taking. So in our CEO survey, what's really interesting is firms are obviously looking to cut costs. You have to cut costs today in today's environment. And you've seen that with, and some of those costs are going to be headcount and some of those are going to be other areas. So firms are looking for ways to drive cost enhancement through automation, through looking at different ways of their ecosystem where they can outsource work, and also looking to reduce workforce. But what's interesting in our data is they're not looking to reduce workforce to the numbers that we've seen historically. 60% of them are actually saying they're not looking to reduce workforce. And so they're looking at other cost levels. So important as firms think about their growth agenda and how they take out costs responsibly. For those businesses that can, and especially those businesses that are more product focused and less service focused, where labor's less of an input, thinking about all the other levers you can to drive out costs is going to be an important part of survival. Right now, businesses have to survive in the next 1 to 2 years so that they can thrive to actually deliver on, their growth agenda. And this dual prong attack of delivering on the short term so you can invest and prepare for the long term is going to be critical. And so what does that mean? To bring it back to a number of people in this audience who are working in and around business and technology, it means more automation. It means that we're going to double down on investments in different types of technology, whether it be automation at the citizen-led level, where people are looking to redesign work and find productivity, whether it's doubling down on some of the hyperscalers in cloud, whether it's shoring up your cyber resources, whether it's thinking about climate tech. Tech is not going away, and firms are going to embrace that automation. But when you do that, you have to bring people along, and you have to think about the customer experience and the user experience. You have to think about the business case. And so the adoption of the technology is as important as the design. So as we look to wrap up, I want to kind of leave you with some closing remarks and really go back to where we started. The trust agenda is more critical than ever. Business has a role in driving trust in society. It has a role of driving trust in how it executes that purpose, whether you're in pharmaceuticals, whether you're in banking, or whether you're in automotive. Scenario planning is here to stay. Those businesses that invest in that capability with the right mindset, with the right data, with the right collaboration, bringing internal and external data points to bear is going to be critical. You have no choice but to mobilize leaders around your organizations to inspire and engage and enable today's and tomorrow's workforce to drive that productivity. As we think about execution, those businesses that will operate at speed, take some selective risks and take course corrections will be the winners. And finally, because any future of work discussion is not a crystal ball, we have to kind of think about changes. You have to do all of that with also building agility, some experimentation and learning, some resilience, and absolutely some grace in how you address all of that. The grace and the compassion is so important right now because your people are watching. We live in 24/7 social media news cycles. It is so critical right now, and it is the right humane way, back to the point of building trust, to get the most out of your people and the most out of delivering on your corporate strategy. Thank you very much for the time. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or send me any questions. Thank you very much.
For more interesting content, like, comment, and subscribe to our NASScom YouTube channel.